Hey guys, welcome back. On this game, we're going to go up against the Scandinavian defense, and we're going to see how to handle some of the main modern line with it. So of course the Scandinavian arises after e4, d5, and queen takes d5. Lately I've been putting a lot of study into the knight f6 line here. I should have some videos on that pretty soon. I've always liked just playing d4 here, just pressing right up against the queen. And knight f6 is one of the main developing moves here. And no need to get crazy, no need to worry about the bishop pin coming out. You can play knight f3 in this position, or we can deviate and go with a move that is seen very rarely at the master level. Scandinavian players know that when white plays c4 here, that the best move is to play queen e4 check. So I'll definitely invite you to discover that line and what you want to do as white if black does decide to play that. Just as often, black is just going to play queen back to d8, and then we just get some nice easy development here. Now bishop coming out to pin, I'm going to go ahead. Alleviating this pin and the pressure on this pin and getting ready to castle is absolutely the best move here. We just want to make sure that if black ever does bring a second piece in to attack our d4 pawn, that we're ready to reinforce it with something like bishop to e3. So e6, getting ready to open up the dark squared bishop. Dark squared bishop to b4 with check is something that I don't want to deal with. If I have that played and I go to block it with bishop e2, then I'm blocking off my queen's defense of d4. And so something like bishop takes, and there's some pressure on the d4 pawn that I don't necessarily have to welcome. And so castling is the best move here. Just now bishop to b4, what's he going to play that for? He has no reason to play that. So he goes into c6, which is a semi-Slav structure, and it's very solid, very foundational here. Just bringing the rook over to e1. And of course the dark squared bishop going to d6. Black wants to gain as much control as he can. If he can ever get the queen on this square, then this is going to be a nice attack here. At some point, maybe the bishop trades for the knight, then he brings his knight in, and his knight brings some extra pressure onto this pawn. So the dark square bishop, very well placed on d6 there, one of its more aggressive outposts. So I decided to go ahead and kick it. Kicking it's not necessarily the best move, but black's response there is fairly forced. Just developing the knight to c3. Once the c4 pawn moves up, I'm no longer guarding the d5 square, so I want my knight there guarding that square in case he decides to jump in with the knight. Possibly better might have been just bishop to g5, because then he can't jump in with the knight either. But either way, here we are, we're developing, and he brings a knight out here. Of course, the knight going to d7 in the Scandinavian, very common here. Start the pressure on the light squared bishop, and he pulls off to f5. Now, you should immediately just be thinking of what you can do to win that bishop here, which is just knight to h4, and after he brings it back, we take. And now we do have to worry about this open file here. But with no light squared bishop able to come over and pick off this pawn and open up this column in front of our king, it's fairly safe for us, and the engine has us quite ahead at this point. Okay, you want to think about pinning the knight here. It's our strongest move. The bishop is our very last piece that we have to develop here. Once it's developed, our queens and our rooks are connected along the back rank here, all of them talking to each other. And so the strongest square that we can bring the bishop out to then is g5, pinning the knight to the queen. Queen steps in, and this move doesn't look very wise at all. So I begin a queenside approach. I figure he's just gonna castle queenside. So I'm trying to mobilize a queenside attack with some pawns, break it all open, get the queens and the rooks over here, and it should be game over, right? But instead he decides to pull the queen over here. I'm not sure why. He could still queenside castle. He doesn't want a queenside castle. He does want a queenside castle. So I'm just going to continue pushing the pawns. And he comes in with the knight. You can pause the video here, figure out what you want to do. I'll give you a few seconds here. There's really no wrong way to go. You can do whatever you want. I decided to take the knight because I feel he's not going to take with this pawn, because once we get our bishop out of the way, then we'll expose a check on him with our rook, and he has no piece that he can block that with, and he's in bad trouble. He's losing material there. So I feel like I can force this. So knight takes, he has to take with this other pawn, and now we can begin our assault on the queen side. Playing a4, getting ready to kick the knight, and just building up pressure on the queen side here. He retreats the knight preemptively, and I just swing the rook over. I feel he's just going to slide the rook over, and we're going to trade, and his bishop will be back here, and then I can pull the pawn forward and get the queen over and push the pawn with an exposed check on the king. I mean, everything feels really good here. He decides to move the knight again, and now this opens us up for a nice tactic coming after bishop to f4. Now I want you to see if you can see what it was. There's a way for us to get in on this queen side, completely rip it open, in basically a forced manner. Pause the video if you want. The move here, and I could have played it on the previous move, but I play it here, is rook to b7. And rook to b7 is going to give up the rook for an attack on his rook with queening potential. The beauty of this bishop f5 move that I played is after he slides the rook over, the bishop comes in, and now we can essentially win a free piece there. So we're doing great. Come in with check, and we're just going to start running them around the board a little bit. Get another check in. One of the big things here now is the last thing I want to see is a rook sack, pawn takes, queen takes, and then have to deal with some sort of perpetual over here, even though the queen taking the pawn would not come with check. So I decided to just go ahead and throw in another check and bring the queen up to d3. Now the queen is guarding here, so if he takes with the rook, he's just going to lose a rook for a pawn. And now he's just sort of lost, trying to bring a rook into the game. Of course, we want to fight for the open file with our rook, force a rook exchange. Now he's coming in with the queen, not sure what he's doing. See if you can see the mating net here. You can pause the video. We have mate in 2. And the way to initiate the mate in 2 here is to play queen to a3 check, because from here the king only has one square that it can go to. And then we can deliver the final check and mate with bishop to d8 here. And consequently skewering all the way through the king and into the queen, a beautiful mate. And I think a really great just illustration game where we were never in trouble with the white pieces. We weren't trying to do anything too crazy with the Scandinavian, except deviating here on move number 4 with c4, only the 3rd or 4th most common move in the master database here for white. So Scandinavian players for black are going to have an idea what they want to do here. They should be able to meet this with queen to e4 check, and then you just have to know what to do. So for example, after queen to e4 check, knight to e2, we're keeping double defense of our pawn here, and he's supposed to play for an open center with e5, and we can just play knight c3, kicking the queen, and he's in sorts of trouble. But we get some forcing moves here. We get bishop over, we get bishop in, we win his bishop. So now we've got the bishop pair. E takes d4, queen takes d4, and even if he castles here like he's supposed to, if he doesn't castle and he takes and we're here, here we are in move 10 with a sizable advantage. We have 3 pieces developed to his 1. Our pawn structures are still intact, and we have the light squared bishops on an open board. This should be really well for us. So definitely a big proponent here of shaking things up. You don't want to play mainline against defenses 7, 8, 9, 10 moves deep where your opponent has been there before and necessarily you haven't. You like to deviate as soon as you can within reason. And in the master database, most of the time, the masters are not playing queen to e4 with check. They're just playing queen back to d8, and white is completely fine here. So really just urging you to take your time with the Scandinavian. I played it myself as black, and I struggled against it with white. So I've gone back to the books, back to studying the lines and remembering what I'm supposed to do here, and it's starting to make a really nice difference in my game. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and we'll catch you next time.